Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm sitting down because I cannot walk properly. So just so you know. And this presentation is a bit about like the fun with SwiftUI and like just a short introduction about iOS development and a bit about SwiftUI, what it is. And also the schedule for this presentation, it's just a little about me, a bit about what SwiftUI actually is, and we're going to build a very small app, and we're also going to build a small widget, and I will explain to you why. So I work as an iOS developer at one agency, and I'm originally from Stockholm. I moved down to Malmö last year, and I've been working as a developer for 12 years now, and I started off as a full stack web developer, and now I work, and since 2016, iOS. And also I teach web app development at Hyper Island when I get the chance. And it's also my first time at Foo Café, so I hope I will do this right. And one of the things I want to show you is just a short video about SwiftUI and the great, like what's so great about it. So I will, no. Can I start the video from here? No, I can't. Jag har gjort det här. It doesn't matter actually if sound or not, because it's the video itself. So let's do a little exit. And oh yeah, I don't have internet. Säg det igen. Vad var det för? And we're in. Okay, so the sound isn't actually that important because he's explaining a bit what SwiftUI is, and when they thought about it, like the difference, the optimizations they did for developers. So now it's just showing this is simple view. This is the code you write in UIKit usually, the old way. It's quite a lot of code. This is the way to write it in SwiftUI, which makes it very impressive because suddenly your development time is shortened by a factor of 10, and that's quite impressive. So let's go back. So this was introduced in iOS 13. So this was released in 2019, which is also the lowest supported version. You cannot use an old phone for this. So you need to have, they're forcing us to actually update so you can use this cool new technology. And the goal for this is, of course, to create a simple way to create iOS apps. So it's very, very similar to how web frameworks already do. So as again, like the fun part is actually it suddenly goes so fast. And if you work with React or Vue or Angular, and this will look very, very similar. And since it has very familiar syntax, it's easy to jump between different languages. So, as he said, as it was on the video, SwiftUI is a declarative framework. And a declarative way of programming is more that you write the expected result. And this is a very, very simple example of a screen. And what it actually does, it's a vertical stack view. So it goes from top to bottom. Then it's a text. And then you add some properties. You change the font. You add some padding. And then below that, it's an image. And we call it bare. And then you add some more padding and border. And that's about it. Like, there's not much. Then you can style it whatever you want. UIKit, however, it works a bit different. So this is the same code, but it follows there's something called imperative way, which is very, very shortly description. I know it's not the complete image, but it means that you need to take steps to get to the expected results. So you need to create the variables and lock them together. And this is also, it's a bit harder to read. So I don't think anyone here, does UIKit look easier, or it does look easier? No, that was not the point. I will ask you later on why you think that, but not now. So let's start building our app. So I have created this great app. It's called Quotify. And as you noticed, I'm a developer. I am not a designer, so this is actually what it looks like. The only thing it can do is it can save one quote. That's all it is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to exit the presentation. I'm going to open Xcode, and I'm going to change. I'm going to mirror it. So, hello, Foo Café. This is actually what you get when you start with. There's two files, only two files. If you worked with UIKit, you know this big file called app delegate, and if you worked with iOS 13, you know there's another big file, which is scene. On pure SwiftUI, it's only two files you start with. So this is like the main one. And this is all, and then and it creates the content for you. So the cool thing about this is actually, I would say even more impressive, is this tool that we have to the right. And that is a preview, so you can see immediately your code. And you can create as many as you want in different phones and everything next to each other without actually building to a real phone. So if we create the one we had, so since it's a stack view, so it starts from the top, you had a text area in the middle, and then you had a button. So if we say that, vstack, we have our text area here, but it was called Quotify. Can you see? Is it clear? I can make it big. Is that good? Oh yeah, it won't work as good. So let's start, and it was called Quotify. Then we have a big text field, and that's called. There's two things here: text field or text editor. Text field is just one row. If we want the big one, we need to use the text editor. And there's only one thing you can add. And this is called a binding. So if you have used one of the modern frameworks, states and binding is one of these things. But just for now, we need to add something. So we can have a fixed value, and it will just say test. Then we have a button. And it will suggest to you what you can write. So you will have title and an action. So when you press the button, what should happen? So in this case, we just have a button that just says save. So let's see. Oh, constant. Okay, so we actually have everything is done here. So there's text, there's a text editor, and there's a button. But we want to change it a bit. So we can start with the title itself. We can make it bigger by adding font. And as you usually do when you're working with Xcode, if you see a type, in this case font, just press the dot and you can see suggestions. So we get a large title suddenly. And not only can you see it immediately, if you press here, it will automatically mark what you actually done. And here we noticed, okay, there's a border here. So we're just going to create a border, and it was the color of black, and it's the width of 1. But it didn't look exactly like this. It's a bit different. So let's add some padding, because it doesn't look great when it's this close. Okay, that's better. But it's still, we need to have padding to the border as well. So we just add another around the border. This is a very, very different approach. So you can actually add as many paddings as you want between objects as you are layering them. So this is actually a bit more complicated in a UI kit. It takes a while to write this. And then the only thing we now have is the button. So the last thing we do is just say background and color red. It's red. But it doesn't look great yet, so we need to add foreground color of white. Okay, looks a bit better. We can add some padding, but what this will do is that it will create this kind of padding. This doesn't look that great. We want to have something between the button and the background. So we just add a padding here. Now it looks good. So this is a function, which means we can actually add values in here. So it's not only padding as a default value, it just uses the one you have selected for your projects. And this is it. Like, this is the view itself. There's not much more we can do for the view. So the last thing we need to do is to actually save this. If you have worked with iOS development before, there's something called user defaults. And that is to save a small setting that should not be, like, it's not considered any safe, it's just a very short, it's just a cache. And in SwiftUI, they have tried to replace it, modernize it a bit, and they called it app storage. So this is also new if you haven't seen SwiftUI before. You can use this at. So this is called a property wrapper. And you can do a lot of things with that. You can hide a bit, you can create new cooler things. But for this case, we're just going to call it quote, and it's a var, and it's a string. So this is all. This is a user default, but it's a more convenient way. It's a bit easier to read as well, and it does a lot more. So you don't have to be so specific about everything. But now what? We cannot do anything with it. The good thing about app storage is that this asset behaves as a binding string, which means if you, like, it basically connects two things to each other. So here we have the constant, which is called test. If we replace this with something called quote, this means every time we change something in the text editor, we save it all the time. So technically, we don't need the save button even. It will just work. And we're going to build this. I was hoping for. Yeah. Okay, so there's nothing here, because what we said here was the quote, the default should be empty. So let's add something. So hello Foo Café. I don't have to save because it won't do anything. So just to make sure it works, we're going to close it completely. And we're going to start it again. So it's still there. This is a full app. This is all the code I wrote. So yes, let's go back to the presentation. And I'm going to change the display. So that went really, really fast. Because it suddenly found to make UIs in SwiftUI. But the app is complete. We have some more time. So let's do a widget. And this was introduced in iOS 14. So you need to have a modern phone, for example, iPhone 6s or above, which is maybe not modern, but they are providing iOS 14 to that phone. And a widget, what it is, it's actually, at least on iOS, Android is a bit more advanced, but this is actually a widget. It's just a snapshot of functionality in the app. It's not a full app. It's not very interactive. It's just a snapshot, like you can view things very quickly. So some widgets I use that I think is great. This is one of my favorites. It's actually a pollen call. So when you just check your phone, you can see like, okay, which levels the current levels of pollen. And so you need to know, you can just check, do I need to take my medicine or not? In the wintertime, this is useless, but in the summertime, it's very, very convenient. And also the battery. So if you have a lot of connected things to your phone, some headphones or another phone, it doesn't matter. Just see your battery levels, so you need to charge them or not. And of course, also the weather. I think at least it's very convenient because you can see the full day at just a glance. And I know Android has this for a while, but it's good to be catching up sometime for Apple. But also now, why build a widget at all? And the main reason is that it's a component that only supports SwiftUI, which means you cannot use UIKit, you cannot use old technology to build it, and it's very... So if you want to force your company, oh, we should try this new widget, it's really cool, you can just try it out. That is my suggestion, at least. So you just take some functionality of your app and say like, yeah, we can do this as a widget. Maybe it's a short glance. Maybe if you work in finance, you can say like, okay, but the daily, if you have stocks, for example, you can say daily stocks. That's a good example of what you can use. So, because we're gonna now go back to Xcode, and we're gonna create a quote widget. So, are we on? No. Okay, so here we are again. We are with our app, our beautiful, beautiful app. And we're just going to create, we're going to go here, and we're going to create a new target. So this is how you create extensions. You press the little plus down there, and you say you want to create a widget. And you press next. What's this going to be called? So we're going to call this quote. You can have it a bit nicer name, quote widget. And this is my personal theme, the project, and yeah, you can leave this as it is. And finish. And activate. Okay, so now I got this new folder and has the widget. That means we can already start creating it. But before, so it has already populated a lot for you. So it already created sort of a date widget for you, which is just to understand, like, show some basics. We're not going to use this raw one. We're going to change it a bit. But there is some things here, which is there's placeholder, there's snapshot, and there's a timeline. So a placeholder is before anything is loaded, if you have no connection to the app, for example, this is what you will see. Snapshot is you can actually load in data as like you can load in one object. You can load this dynamically from the app. So this is all dynamic. Then the timeline. I want to bring up the keynote again because I want to, because it's quite a concept. It's very hard to explain to someone what it actually is, but it is explaining how often a widget can be updated, because you have limited amounts of update per day, which is around 70. And that brings down to around 15 if you need to update your widget every 15 minutes. Also in the timeline, there are entries, so you define the content and a date. And the date is just say, when should it be updated? And this is just like the basics. So it is a bit complicated. It will take a few days to understand, like, okay, what can you actually do with it? But for our widget, which will only show a quote, we don't need to dig as much. So let's go back. So we have this called simple entry. And we only have a date here now. We need to keep the date. We cannot remove it. So we just add the quote, which is a string. And now it will start complaining about that it's missing this. We're going to just remove this, all of this. And we're going to add here just quote. And that for now is going to be blank. You will see why soon. And let's see, entry date is just a date. And quote, just grab a string, and we can have it as test. And we can have it as placeholder here. So if we now, it won't really work because the preview also needs to be updated. So let's say the Foo Café. So there's also different sizes of this. So for now, for example, this is the system small. You can make it, there's medium, large, and extra large. It's like t-shirt sizes. Very easy to remember. Okay, so now we have, okay, so we're also missing something here. the entry has the quote. It's not a time. That would be weird. So it has Foo Café. This is just a preview. So how do we connect now these two with each other? And if we go back to the content view, we can actually work with the app stores. Because it is a user defaults, we can do a bit more with it. If we go to here, we need to add a capability called app groups. So I already prepared this one. So we can add it to the quote as well. So app group. And we just check it in. So this means they can share. Now they share between each other. So, and also if you're a company or you have multiple apps, they can all share this same user defaults. So if we go back to here, so we want to save that this app storage, it should not only save to the default, which is this means. We want it to save to this store. So it's a bit easy because it's quite long, but we're saying, okay, save it in this group and we can share it between everything. It's not only widgets. It's you can have a lot of extension. If you have Siri, if you have a watch, if you have health kit, anything, use the same one. So we can use this here. And then we can go back to our widget and we can load this. And if we say quote here, and with user defaults, we can get a string and the key, as the one we defined here, is quote. So we just use the same one. And I misspelled that. So we're almost done here. The thing is, even if we save, it won't actually update anything. We still need to do the little step. I'm gonna import widget kit. And when we press save, this time we're going to do it for real, we will actually update. So this means reload all timelines. So in this case, if we have, you can say, oh, just reload this widget, but we only have one widget, so it doesn't matter. But in this case, if we have a lot of widgets, this can update all of them at the same time. And the good thing about updating your widget from your app is that it's unlimited. You can do it as many times as you want. So you're not limited to those 70 updates you have usually. And that's very, very convenient. So when you try to update, use your app as much as you can. Okay, let's try this out. So if we're gonna build, so we see the new widget. This is not it. This is an old one. So as you can see, it already says Foo Café. But if we go into here, I don't know if a beautiful quote into not Lorraine. And we just say save. And we go back home and it's updated. So in less than 30 minutes, I created a full app. Full app, it's a bit overestimating. And I created a widget because it's not a lot of code that I've actually added. It's very, very small. And one of the things I really like, again, with this automatic preview, is that it's just not just one. We can duplicate this. So, okay, now we have 2. I want to see how it looks in medium. And it just updates, like, every single time. You can add as many as you want. You can change it, what font size, if it's going to be accessibility mode. You can do that without even starting your phone. So you're saving so much development time. Also, also the good thing about SwiftUI is that it's not only your iOS device, it's also iPad, it's also your Mac OS, and I'm not sure about tvOS. I haven't tried that one. So you can so even though the code is smaller and more maintainable, easier to view, you can publish it to multiple platforms. So they made it so much easier. The big one? Let's try that. So we're gonna oh wait, you want to see here or the? That's the medium. We can show the super large one, which is almost takes. Yeah, it's quite big. So just a comparison between the large one. Let's see, System Extra Large. Yes, I know System Extra Large is actually bigger. I'm not sure why it doesn't show up here, but it's a bit bigger. So yeah, so 2 mediums, or one medium is 2 smalls, 2 mediums and 1 large. Extra large is supposed to be super big, but apparently not in this. But it doesn't matter. You can also change the color. So you can say that it's going to be dark mode or light mode. That did not work as I expected. The background or the text color changed, but not the background. It doesn't matter. I had not prepared for that one. So yes.
If you go back to the phone app.
Yes.
Now you built the UI on the bottom.
Yeah.
How would you place the save button on the right, for instance?
The save button on the right.
Yeah, on the right of the input field.
So the easiest way would do this is to have. So this is a vertical stacks. So I would put it as a horizontal stack.
Okay, so this is how you create an interface in code.
Yep.
And you have a grid to work with, like the really old HTML grids that you needed tables to actually build stuff. How do you?
Yeah, I mean it's a bit about. Yes, so it's a bit back to the basics, to the H stack. You can of course move around a bit as well, like your own. You can add margins and how long should be from one edge to another when you need it to. But usually a good UI is a bit easier to, how do you call it? It should be actually in boxes. Like it's so much easier to work with when it comes. Yeah.
Is there an interface builder in this code somewhere? You can actually draw your interface as you want it, and then you put functionality on the buttons.
No, there's not. You can drag in different labels and everything, so you can have the drag and drop, but not.
Because my next question is, let's say that you want to do a prototype. You're going to do something.
Yep.
Let's say you're going to prototype a new app called Twitter.
Yep.
How fast would it be to actually create a prototype that looked exactly like Twitter does today? Very limited functionality, but you could actually use the usability test.
I mean, as fast as I did, it's very quick. So, I mean, it depends on what screens, of course, in Twitter. But if you want to say like, oh, we have a flow here, this is how you enter. I mean, you can.
Because I'm trying to understand if this could be used instead of Figma balsamic, for instance, is that you can do a prototype. You click on a button, something happens. Very limited, but you can simulate some sort of user interaction. I can see the power in this, that you can actually create more user interaction. Stuff can happen more, but if it takes me a day to draw an interface or a system in balsamic, and it takes me a week after learning Xcode, then I will still continue using balsamic.
Of course. Yeah. I wouldn't replace Balsamico with SwiftUI. It's not that simple, because you need to have, because there is quite some constraints as well. Things you are expecting it to behave like, maybe it won't do. There are also this customization that you can do in Figma and even Balsamico that doesn't really apply to iOS development. So I wouldn't replace it, honestly. You can use it if you want to have like a quick test, see if the functionality works. But when it comes to the customization, no. You can do much more. You can be a bit more refined, because this is very targeted to developers. So while Balsamico, at least when I used it a few years ago, was very targeted to. Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit different. Yeah, so it's a bit different mindset. What can you do? Also, you need often a lot of variations. Like, oh, what happens? Yeah, which is not. You can try it out in here, but it's not as refined, I would say, as in Figma and Balsamico. Yes, yes, and that takes almost most of the time, and that you can, at least for me as a developer, when I don't have this phone, okay, then I have to download a simulator that looks kind of similar on this particular screen. But also the good part, if you are using this with UIKit, because you can use the preview with UIKit as well. If you have a more like the latest Xcode, works great. So because I'm done, what I hope you bring with you today is that, yeah, SwiftUI is very easy to learn, and if you want to try SwiftUI and you want your company to say like, no, you cannot do that, say a widget, because it doesn't break any functionality, but it could add value. So thank you. If you want to contact me at Joacim Nidén at oneagency.se or at LinkedIn. Thank you. Should we stop the streaming?